everyone, my name is Lauresta Rahayu Putri and I'm here to give more explanation on the infographic that I've made about historical and biographical approach. Now, let's jump to the definition of the approach first before we get to know the others. So basically, historical biographical approach is one of the earliest literary approaches in analyzing literary texts. According to Guerin, 2005, this approach is a way to see literary works as a reflection of the author or character's life and times. Using this approach, you will know the historical background and also the author's biography of the literary works you want to analyze. As for the second, we have history of historical and biographical approach. It is first stated by Hippolyte Adolphe Taine, who is a critic from French, and he presents this approach, as we understand it today, in his book titled The History of English Literature. Taine sees text as a fossil shell that naturally reflects the person who created it. In this context, it refers to the literary works and the author's background. Studying the text without looking at the author and his or her internal mind would make the analysis incomplete. And next, we have a little bit session of fun fact about historical biographical approach. So actually, during the modernist revolution in 1918 up to 1945, new critics reject the existence of historical biographical as a literary approach. And why so? It is because the approach analyzes the extrinsic factors of the text, leading to what new critics called intentional fallacy. William K. Wimsatt and Monroe Bradley, who are the American literary critics and key figures in new criticism, argue that intentional fallacy may cause confusion when analyzing literary works, leading to what they called as biographical irrelevance. Even so, in the 1930s, this approach became popular again because of Freudian and Marxist ideas. But many critics were suspicious because it relied too much on outside factors. Next, to understand literary texts, according to Taine, we must analyze the environmental factors that influence the work. There are 4 categories that Taine has divided. The first one is race. It refers to authors' race or when they were born and raised in the same country that share peculiar intellectual beliefs, emotion, and the way of understanding. By learning all of this, Taine believes we will understand the text even more. Next is milieu. Milieu, in other words, the surroundings. For example, English citizens live differently than French or Irish citizens. It is necessary to examine the author's culture so that we understand better the intellectual and cultural concern within the text. Next, we have moment. Author moments or epoch refers to the time or period when the text was written. It will help us to identify and understand the character's action, motivations, and concern, as the information tells us dominant ideas of people from that era. And lastly, we have dominant faculty. What we call as dominant faculty here is the author's individuals, one that differentiate him or her from those who have similar characteristic of 3 categories above. In other words, it is the author's unique characteristics that no one other than him possessed. As for the last session, we have the application for literary works. I choose a literary work, short story by Ernest Hemingway titled Cat in the Rain, and it is a story of American couple who stayed in one of the hotels in Italy, and it focuses on the wife's character wanting to have the cat she saw for a companion. However, this story is not as simple as that, and using historical biographical approach, it helps us to reveal the meaning of the story further. And I also provide 2 articles analyzing the short story. The first one, we have readings of Ernest Hemingway's Cat in the Rain in its literary context by Majid S. Alehaibi. He states that the war monument mentioned in the story reflect memories of war that are still very fresh in the character's mind, and apparently the story was written during the Great War or the First World War. Next, Al-Haibi argues that the husband, George, find comfort in the area in which has war monuments. One is the hotel he stayed on with his wife. Al-Haibi also argues that the way Hemingway depicts the war in his works as something meaningless, unnecessary sacrifice, and a sense of disillusionment, leading to all feelings that the characters have gone through in the story. The second article is a study on Cat in the Rain from the perspective of special criticism by Mengji. Mengji states that the monument of war is seen as memory of war, bloodshed and death, and a symbol to the character's marriage crisis. World War I has changed the protagonist's relationship, marking them as lost generation, where they caught in the aftermath of war, leading to their marriage conflicts as the main conflict in the story. Next, Jay argues that young men in that era, including George, were devoted in fulfilling the war's goals. Only then to realize that they have been tricked and used by the government. They are no longer living in what once they called peaceful life. Okay, so that's all my explanation on the infographic, and if you want to see or read the sources I used for my work, you can click on the link in the description below that I have provided. Thank you very much for watching, and bye bye.